Hello, Sooner Nation, OU Insider subscribers, Coach Brian Clinton enthusiasts, people who were a little surprised at the softball team's performance in Austin this weekend or this past weekend. Anybody who has strong feelings to OU moving up its season opener 2024 against Temple to a Friday night game. Anybody who, if you fall into those two categories, this podcast is the right one for you. This is another episode of the Oklahoma Drill, a podcast fueled by OU Insider and the Rivals Network. My name is Jesse Crittenden. I am joined, as always, forever and ever. So I have allergies. As always, forever and ever. It's raining outside, man. The weather here can't make up its damn mind. I'm joined, as always, by Sir Coach, the third, fourth, and fifth, Brian Clinton. Brian, are you struggling with your allergies like me? Because I'm dying. I'll be honest.
Am. You probably can't tell that I'm super nasally, but I've been putting all kinds of chemicals into my body, nose, mouth, and making sure that I'm somewhat taken care of. But yeah, this is this time of year, and then inevitably when all the pollen kind of picks back up in the fall for some reason as it dies down, I have one episode that's typically pretty bad. I don't think this one's the bad one quite yet, but we're getting close. So yeah,
I
I can't stand allergies.
I'm now realizing that I should have taken better care of this before we started. So I
Hey,
apologize.
do it live, man. That's what it's about. Real
We'll do it live.
authentic. Yeah, do it live.
We'll do it live.
Screw it. We'll do it live.
Is that
Censored.
is that Bill O'Reilly?
I think
We'll do
so.
it live. Oh man, God bless him. What a. Anyways, hey, this is the Oklahoma Drill, and we are actually awaiting a potential addition to the 2025 recruiting class, but we expect that news to drop while we are on live here, Brian. So we're waiting on pins and needles to see if that happens. We have it on decent authority. It will. We will react to that live if it happens. But until then, Brian, it's been, since yesterday. I mentioned it earlier that OU season opener in the fall against Temple has been moved up from a Saturday late morning 11 a.m. kickoff that everybody loves. Everybody just loves 11 a.m. kickoffs to a Saturday evening game or a Friday, a Friday evening game against Temple. And there's a lot of reasons for it. Joe Castiglione released a statement yesterday explaining the move. Basically, that will be the primetime game that evening. It'll be the first Friday night home game or home kickoff in OU, or at least in Oklahoma Memorial Stadium history, and lots of other things. But Brian, I'll be honest with you, it produced a little bit of a stronger reaction in a bunch of different ways than I expected it to. And before I get into how I felt about it, what was your initial reaction to, not that it's the biggest deal in the world, but moving from a Saturday morning kickoff to open your season to Friday night on primetime? What'd you think?
I like it. And that's crazy for me to say. I want to preface by saying I think Friday nights are for high school football. I mean, I think that's like I think there's a special place, at least in my heart, for college football, obviously, but for high school football, I think that's like the one thing that those kids and coaches, like, that's held sacred, is Friday nights. So most of the time I'm really against Friday night kickoffs for college games. We're going to see that more, especially now that the conferences are starting to get bigger and you're having less conferences. You're filling more primetime windows. I know for a fact that the Big 12 and the Big 10 are going to start doing some games with Fox on Friday nights. So like that's going to be there's a big pull for that. So as far as it goes for Oklahoma, though, like this is a win-win. I think that this is a good thing, and for a couple of reasons. One, we've been in so many, we've been in so many different. Well, we're gonna.
I love it.
This is all right.
I love it. First time, right?
Well, yeah,
That's
that's
a debut.
first time, first time.
Debut.
That's Blakely, and my pride and joy, Taylor, my wife. So, welcome them onto
We're
the show.
we're a family pod here,
That's
Brian.
right.
We're a
That's right.
family pod.
Um, we are. I lost my train of thought. Uh,
We have
so
been through.
we've been through several season openers, whether I was just there as an observer or, last year, obviously, filming down on the field. And it's hot. And it's hot at like 2:30 on August 31st. Like you don't really want anything to do with that. I mean, we've seen people passing out. You've got all kinds of EMT folks out there helping people stay cool with hydration stations and all kinds of stuff. Like, I mean, there's a big portion of the OU fan base that's older. I mean, they're like, they're up there in age, and it's really not safe to have them out there in 100-degree weather, packed in 86,000 deep. So I think it's a win to move this game to Friday night. A 6:30 kickoff, or 6:30 kickoff.
6:30.
And the temperature's already going down at that point. It's going to continue to fall as the game goes on. And it's the first time OU has ever played a Friday evening game in Oklahoma Memorial Stadium. So I think it's a win-win. It's fun. And look, honestly, I think the people that are complaining about it are just those people that find anything to complain about. Like they're out there. Like, we've all dealt with them. I don't think they really understand why they're mad about it, other than there are those people. I had plans to travel. I had plans set aside to do this or that. I mean, you still have like 130 some odd days to get it figured out. So, like, I don't know. That's my 2 cents on it.
I'll be surprised. I'll just be honest with you. I sit in the press box, so it's like I'm not fully exposed to the elements like everybody else is. But I'm just telling you now, I've been dreading that 11 a.m. kickoff on Saturday. I mean, I was gonna be dreading that every day until the game. The Hog, as much as it's great to be at the stadium and when it's football season, those games, man, when they're just hot and it's just the middle of the day,
Yeah.
they're miserable, dude.
And they're not
Nobody's having fun.
no, like it was, what was it, 77-0 or whatever it was against Arkansas State? Like,
Good
those
Lord.
poor Arkansas State fans.
I know, man. But no, look, prime time, I think it's already sort of an interesting matchup just for the first week of the season for Oklahoma. Yeah. And prime time first game as a member of the SEC.
That part's cool.
Yeah. Friday evening. I get your point about high school football, and that point of it, I can understand wanting to preserve that. I'm not really worried about that. I'm worried about that just in the sense that this isn't going to be a thing that is constant, or this isn't going to be a trend.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I do think we will probably see some adjustments to the high school schedule that week, possibly in terms of moving stuff to Thursday. Yeah. Heck, we've seen Clash football, Norman North, Norman High football. We've seen it happen. It's typically first week of the season game. We've seen it play on Thursdays because they sometimes play at the OU stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't be surprised to see that moved to Thursday, see that game played then. But I don't know, man. Like, to me, it's not about like being over the moon excited. I just think it's cool. Like, heck yeah, Friday evening. Then you get to spend Saturday. You get to spend the rest of the weekend watching all of the other games because OU's already done, right?
Yes, that I can appreciate. Like, that's something I am excited for, because once the season starts, I mean, don't get me wrong, this is a dream job. I absolutely love what I do, but man, it does suck sometimes when you miss like those, like the Ohio State Michigan games every once in a while, or like something big that you really enjoyed watching or keeping up with. You kind of miss some of those now, and that'll be nice, at least on the first week of the season. So that'll be good.
That's it's something we really don't get to watch that much football during the season. And like at least as it's happening, like
Correct.
live
Yeah.
as it's
Going
happening.
back, I watch a ton of
Yeah.
it Sunday, Monday, but yeah.
Yeah. But you miss a lot of games because I think people forget, or not people forget, people don't think of, for people like us, people that cover the team. Um, it's not just the 3.5 hours that you spend covering the game as it's happening. It's the 2 to 3 hours before the game when you get
Yep.
to the stadium and have all that stuff you got to do. Then it's the
Hmm.
2 to 3 to 4 hours after the game that you're
Yeah.
doing stuff. And by that point, even for an 11 a.m. game, by the time you're done, most of the football is already football.
Yes. Yes.
It's already
Well,
happened.
and that's the other thing, like, you know, previously, like just as a fan, when if there was a 7 p.m. kickoff, I was like, yes, like that's perfect, like awesome, we get to do that. Now I hear a 6:30 or 7 p.m. kickoff on a Saturday night, and I'm like, oh gosh,
So I'm gonna be done at
I'm gonna be,
1:30.
I'm not gonna get home until 3 a.m.
Yeah.
So,
See,
but
don't the people should be thinking about us, Brian. They shouldn't
right,
be
yeah,
thinking
I
about
mean,
themselves. They should be thinking about
how
us.
selfish of Oklahoma to make us stay out that late.
It's just another example of journalists as we're overlooked and underappreciated, Brian. It's terrible.
The thankless job.
It is. God. But I don't know. I think it's gonna be pretty cool. Friday night under the lights. First time in the SEC. And it's not gonna be a billion degrees outside.
Oh, I'm so excited just to see the SEC logo on the field.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I can't wait for that. That's going to be pretty cool.
It is. Brian, we've got some stuff to talk about with softball. We're still monitoring um, this potential news that could drop, whether that's while we're live or 5 seconds after we wrap, like it probably will be. Um, Before we get to some of the softball stuff, and there's a lot of softball stuff to talk about, I wanted to ask you. Next week is going to be our full breakdown for the spring game, I think, because obviously we're 10 days away from the spring game. It's next Saturday at 1 p.m. I think next week's pod will be our full spring game breakdown, all the positions, all the players to watch, all that kind of stuff. But I wanted to ask you before we get into softball stuff: is there an angle? Is there a storyline that we haven't talked enough about? Because I'm going to throw something at you kind of as an example, and I want you to tell me what you think. What's Angelo Anthony's role going to be when he comes back, when he's fully healthy? What's that going to look like? Because that wide receiver room as a whole, I think we're both really excited about the depth there and how many potential playmakers are going to be there. But even if you removed Angelo Anthony from the equation, it's going to be really hard to find. I personally, just as a trying to monitor that room, this is going to surprise you, literally 0%. I am worried that someone like Jaden Gibson is just not going to get enough playing time for how much he deserves or for how much he's earned, how impactful he could be. I think you're already worrying about that problem without Angelo Anthony. Now, before the season starts, most likely you're going to be adding a guy that is coming off a major injury, but last year was the team's leading receiver through the first 6 weeks of the year. Not that it's a concern, but do you think that's something that's not necessarily being talked enough about? Or is it possible he could be overlooked? Is it possible it's going to shake things up right before the season starts? What do you think? And then do you have an angle that hasn't been talked about enough?
So, as it pertains to Jaden Gibson in particular, it really sounds and feels like, at least from what you and I have seen and what everybody else has seen, it really feels like Jaden Gibson has taken this opportunity and like run with it. Like he's I know that he's probably behind Nick Anderson on the depth chart if they're both healthy coming into the spring. But man, he's looked good. And that
Yeah.
when he puts it all together, the speed and the length and the size that he has is, I mean, is just incredible. So I almost wonder if he hasn't really forced um, Coach Jones to look at that a little closer. But to answer your question, I have no freaking idea what they're going to do with that room because I don't know who you leave off. Especially, and the thing that compounds that is the evolution of Bauer Sharp, like as he's since he's come to Norman, and from what we've seen or heard as he was going through workouts to what we've seen on the field, like I mean, he's gone from, a guy maybe to be excited about to a guy you should be watching to this guy's going to play a huge role in the offense. And that takes another receiver off the field. So I really don't know how they're going to manage all that. But what I do know is, and I don't remember who said this because I'd love to give him credit for it. And I'll paraphrase here, but last year after Emmett Jones started to really put together the class that he did in 24 and then started picking up some of these guys in 25, those there's going to be attrition in the transfer portal. Like it's going to happen. That's part of football. That's part of what we're going into. This spring and maybe we'll see some changes to the rules, but this is what an SEC depth roster looks like. Like you have to have that kind of competition because if you don't, you're lacking the depth necessary to keep up whenever attrition on the field starts to set in. You have to have guys that are ready to step in and play a major role. A really good example of that is what we just saw the Georgia transfer to Texas. AD Mitchell, I believe, is that Adonai Mitchell. That's what he prefers, Adonai Mitchell. Um, that's a guy that played somewhat sparingly at Georgia. Um, did have catches in all their national championship games, touchdown catches, and then he comes to Austin and has a terrific year. Um, that's a perfect example. There are guys like that hidden on rosters all over the SEC, and Oklahoma at the wide receiver position is in that position right now. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm really curious to see because Andrew Anthony, I mean, through that Cincinnati game and going into the Texas game, like he was your it factor. Like that was the guy that was going to make a big play in the passing game. So with him, with Deion Burks, with Nick Anderson coming back into the fold, you've got to work Jaquez Petaway into the into the
Jalil
mix.
Farouk,
Jalil Farouk is
Jaden
going to be a
Gibson,
starter. Yeah, it's just like
Brennan Thompson.
I have no idea. Like, and you're not even Ivan Carrions looked like a stud. Like there's freshmen breaking. Like I don't know. I have no idea.
Zion.
Yes,
I
Zion
mean,
Kearney. Yeah, what are they going to do?
you're not. Here's the thing. Here's what I know for sure. More than one person is going to get squeezed out.
Yep.
You're not going to get enough. And so I actually like, while I think it's a good thing to have so much depth, and there's a lot of ways Emmett Jones could move this
Hmm.
rotation around and this position group around, I do actually think in some ways that puts pressure to figure out how to manage it, how to divvy up the
Absolutely.
snaps, who works in what alignments, who works together. And I think adding Andrew Anthony into the mix after he's missed so much time does make this equation
Yes.
really interesting, but also a little bit more complicated.
Right.
Again, not a bad thing, but an interesting thing. But like, if Deion Burks shows out and plays really, really well, that's going to mean minimal playing time for Jaquez Petaway and Brennan Thompson, most
Yep.
likely. It just is.
It's a tough thing. It's kind of like the tough reality of today's college football. You gone are the days of sitting as a freshman and being guaranteed a little more playing time as a sophomore and then a little more playing time as a junior and then you're a certified starter by your junior or senior year. Coaches can go out, teams are going out and they're getting somebody that's ready right now. And that's just how it is. And that domino effect falls all the way down to the high school level. And so, um, yeah, I don't know. It's really interesting. Recruiting's not our forte by any means. We leave that to Brandon and Parker, but there are some really interesting things when it comes to like what the other question is, what does Emmett Jones do for the 2025 class? Like, how do you bring in top end talent when you have that many young guys ready to go? Um, Before we get to my takeaway or my look at some of the stuff from spring, the news has dropped. It has dropped.
All
Um,
right, so we can officially announce it.
we can announce it. If you want to go ahead and do the honors, I'm going to get some things squared away here.
Oh, okay. Well, after some back and forth, OU lands its second commitment of the day in Trent Wilson, the number 27 overall player and the number 7 defensive tackle in the country in the 2025 class. According to our own OU Insider experts, Parker Thune and Brandon Drum, that is per our OU Insider Twitter account. Brian, one day, 2 commitments for the Sooners in the 2025 class. Obviously, Malik Hawkins was the first guy to commit earlier today. You guys will likely recognize the last name and probably already know all about him. Obviously, his brother is already on the roster, going through spring practice right now in the quarterback room. Malik Hawkins is 4-star cornerback who committed earlier today. OU picks up another commit today in Trent Wilson. Brian, you have already done a little bit of a scouting report on him because we've anticipated this was going to happen for a while. What are your initial impressions of him, and what's OU getting?
So the first thing that jumped off the screen with Wilson, and most of the film that I watched was him as a sophomore. So there was a short clip, about 3 minutes of junior film, but he had about 10 minutes of sophomore film up on Huddle. First thing that jumped off the screen was how explosive this guy is. So he's listed at 6'3", 275. He was probably, I would bet, as a sophomore, he was probably closer to 6'2", maybe 260, somewhere in that area. Um, but it didn't matter. Like, the guy was still lining up in a shade or a zero, like head up on the center, and he was just explosive, man. Like the initial shock when he puts his hands on the offensive lineman, like he was getting movement. But the other thing is his arms are incredibly long. I think he is almost looking at a 7 foot wingspan, and he's 6'3". So this is a guy that's got really good leverage points, really good levers to use. Um, but man, he is explosive, dude. Like this, and the really exciting thing, at least for me, uh, that explosion and that raw power that he shows, that stuff translates. But the exciting part about it is, I think he's light right now. Like, if he's truly 275, the frame that he has is totally workable. Like, there's no reason why he can't add another 20 pounds and continue to be the explosive player that he is. And he's running down quarterbacks in the backfield, outrunning them to the sidelines in a lot of ways. And this is a guy that's coming from the interior. So, there's a lot more details on that over on the story I just posted. But it's a really good win for Todd Bates and company. Especially, this is a guy that visited Penn State like 7 times officially from like 2022 to 24. He didn't make it out to Norman until last month, and that's all he needed. He needed one visit, needed one, I guess, Godfather offer, if you will, and he couldn't turn it down. And he's a Sooner now, so it's exciting. He's a big time get for the Sooners, and really, like, I mean, how cool is it? Here we are, 3 years into the Brent Venables era, and defensive linemen, secondary players, like you're really seeing Oklahoma reel in some of the top talent in the country, and that was like a foregone conclusion that that wasn't going to happen just a few years ago. So it's pretty cool.
6'3", 275 is what he's measured at right now. OU started the day with 11 commits in their 2025 class. Now they got 13, man. And you look at that class top to bottom, and they're not done. OU is far from done
Oh yeah.
in this 2025 class. But you got to like the way it's shaping up, man. And I'm glad you mentioned what they're doing on the defensive line. Obviously, you can even look at the 2024 class and what Brent Venables and this coaching staff did with Jaden Jackson and David Stone and Danny Okoye. I mean, there's several guys they're building with, and now you look at what they've already or what they're doing now with Trent Wilson and Alex Shield Knight and Kamori Moore. I mean, they are getting they're getting some dudes on this defensive line, man. They're getting guys, and I mean, these are the kind of guys you have to get, like baseline with these measurables, with their builds, their skill sets. These are the kind of guys you have to get.
Yep. 100%.
So I don't know. I think it's one to be excited about, man. And I guess we might as well briefly react to Malik Hawkins.
Yeah.
Obviously, like I mentioned, he was the first one today. What was your initial reaction? I know we've been prepared for this for a while, but
Right. Yeah, he is. This is a like if you've heard anything about how his brother has performed in spring, it should excite you to have a guy on the other side of the ball with that same kind of athleticism. I really like what he brings to the table. He's listed at 6'1", 180 pounds, but I think the really exciting part about it is these two guys are the two. These two guys have moved Oklahoma into number 4 right now as far as the team ratings go. So Oklahoma is starting to really pile on. And as you said, there are several pieces still in play that are going to come at a later date. But for Hawkins, you know, he's been to Oklahoma so many times. Like this was one that's been coming down the pipe for a long time. And obviously his brother being at Oklahoma plays a big role in that. But I do like what he brings from the defensive side of the ball. I didn't take as deep of a dive into him just yet. I spent most of my time this week on Wilson, but from the stuff that I did watch, I watched a couple of minutes. He seems to have really good ball skills, good instincts, and somebody that has performed well in a camp setting. So that obviously bodes well for Oklahoma. And when you got a guy like Jay Valai back there and Brandon Hall to help out with the secondary play, Coach Venables has had very, very good secondary play pretty much for the majority of his time as a coach. So I would expect nothing less from Malik Hawkins whenever he gets to Norman.
really like what he could bring. His versatility, I think, is the main thing that stands out to me. I think
Yeah.
he's going to be a guy that they can move around defensively in a few different ways. He's listed at 6'1". He's got some decent size. I think that'll be interesting. Brian, I think we might run out of time to talk about the thing that anything that came to mind for you that we haven't talked about enough yet, but we can talk about it next week when we do our full spring breakdown.
It's already there, man.
I know. That's going to be another mega episode. We did a mega episode a couple of weeks ago to break down all of our observations. Next week, I think, will be another mega episode. I cannot believe the spring game is already almost here. It's crazy.
No. Yeah.
But we need to spend just a few minutes to talk about softball.
Yeah.
And we talked about it a lot over the weekend. We were both in Austin for 3 days, basically, to to watch and cover what ended up being, I don't know if surprising is the right word, but first series OU has lost since 2011. First series they've lost to Texas since 2009, and that was when they were still playing 2-game series.
Yeah.
And their lowest scoring output in a series since 2012, only 7 runs. And I got to tell you, man, they played last night in Wichita State. They go up 7-0 in the second inning, and I'm thinking, oh man, so we're about to get a 15-0 run rule. Easy. Nope. Not what happened. They didn't score again. after the second inning. They had five, I think they had 5 hits across the first 2 innings and then had four the rest of the way and didn't score. No, part of that, and I watched every inning, even as it was painfully clear that OU was going to win that game, even once Alyssa Brito drove in Jada Coleman for the first run of the game. Patty unloaded the bench. A lot of players got in the game,
Yeah.
but there were still, I mean, Alyssa Brito still got some at bats. Tiara Jennings still got some at bats. I didn't love the way OU played yesterday. I'll just be honest with you. I didn't
Yeah.
love it. And it's not about ringing. It's not about sounding the alarm. They're 36-3. It's insane. They had not lost a conference series between 2011 and last weekend. It's
Yeah.
insanity. They're still third in scoring. They're first in batting average. They're first in on base percentage nationally. It's not about ringing the panic bell, but I thought what Texas showed last weekend was real in terms of ways you can slow down this OU offense. I thought OU got unusually complacent
Hmm.
or didn't make the proper adjustments that we normally see them make. I mean, to only score one run in back-to-back games is pretty rare against a really good Texas pitching
Sure.
staff, but
Yeah.
you would have thought OU would put more runs on the board. And then yesterday, I think in past years, we would have seen OU really put it on Wichita State. And after the second inning, the bats froze.
Yeah.
So I mean, we've had a couple of days now to break down or to process what happened over the weekend. That game or the Wichita State game happened last night. What's been your read on all of it, and has your thoughts overall changed since we got back from Austin?
Um, I think my main takeaway, and this was something that you really hammered home before we even went to Austin, was the comparison of how many times Oklahoma was walked going into the weekend versus how little Texas had walked their opponents. And the more I think about it, the more I realize that Texas's pitchers attacked the strike zone against Oklahoma. Like, I mean, they really were hammering the strike zone and forcing Oklahoma to swing at pitches and foul things off. And they weren't giving them a whole lot of they weren't giving them a whole lot of things to look at and watch go by. And Oklahoma has been one of the more uh what's the word I'm looking for there? Oklahoma's been one of the more uh, disciplined batting teams that we've seen in quite some time, and I think that continues to be the case now even. But I think we've seen them kind of hit a little bit of a slump, and a lot of that might have to do with what we saw Texas do, and I think we may see that from some pitching staffs going forward. Now, good or bad news, the next three teams that Oklahoma faces, BYU, Houston, UCF, their team ERAs are, I mean,
So I can give you the info on that. I just
yeah,
did my
I-
scouting report today.
yeah,
BYU's collective ERA in conference play is 8.2
yeah,
for the season. They don't have a pitcher that has an ERA better than 3.5,
yeah,
and the one who has a 3.5 has played in one game.
yeah.
They've had 3 games where they've been shut out. It's just
I think
OU.
Texas Tech put 35 runs up on them in a weekend
Yeah,
or something like that. So they're,
o, OU should go ballistic
yeah,
this weekend.
yeah.
I mean, they should, but go ahead. Sorry.
Well, it's the same. It's the same thing. I think UCF's going to have the best of any of the three, as far as team ERAs goes. But Houston's going to be the same way. And you've got this is the nuts part. Like this is what's crazy. There's only 4 series left on the schedule
It's
already. There's only 4 series left on the schedule. 3 of them are in Norman. So you've you've really the only one you've got to go on the road to is at in Orlando for UCF, and then you get Oklahoma State to finish the year in Norman. So that series against Oklahoma State obviously is going to be pivotal um, in the seeding in all kinds of things. I mean, we're looking at Oklahoma State, and Texas, like 3 of the top 4 teams in the country, and It's going to be interesting to see how those things play out whenever it comes to super regionals. I mean, it's not outside the realm of possibility coming out of last weekend. It's not outside the realm of possibility for Oklahoma to be a team that potentially is on that 8-9 seed spot if they were to lose that series to Oklahoma State. Um, you know,
It would
I
place you would have to win the Big 12 tournament.
yes. And
You have to.
that's odd. Like that feels really weird to say that, but that's just the position that Oklahoma's in. And it's not, again, I'm not ringing the panic alarm. Like I don't think that this is a time to just freak out and Patty Gasso's lost her way and doesn't like I'm not saying that whatsoever. That's not the case. I think it's just Texas and Oklahoma State have spent so many years trying to catch up with Oklahoma. Like they have elevated the game to that point where all these other teams are having to play catch up. Duke is doing it now. Like you're seeing these other schools figure out, oh, maybe having one dominant pitcher isn't necessarily the way to do this. Maybe we need to have a group, and maybe the bats need to be taken in the way that Oklahoma's doing. Obviously, it's working. So like you're seeing the game elevate and change, and these other schools have caught up. Well, now Oklahoma shares the conference with two of the best teams in the country. And at the end of the day, I mean, you've got to go beat them head up. And I think again, don't panic about Texas. It was 2-1 in both games. There were obviously opportunities for Oklahoma to win those games. It didn't play out that way. And we saw Oklahoma in a truly hostile environment for the first time since when? Like I can't think the last time, maybe Stillwater last year, but I don't even did Oklahoma even go to Stillwater last year? Was that in Norman? It's
That
supposed to
was it.
trade off.
That was in
It,
Stillwater
it was
last
in
year.
Stillwater. Okay, so that would have been the last time that this team saw any kind of any hostility, and they didn't have Jordy Ball to even it out. So I don't know. It's an interesting situation to be in. I'm not panicking, but I do think that the pressure kind of is on Oklahoma for the first time in a while that, you know, they're maybe not viewed as the top dog right now, just at least for this week.
Well, I mean, they're still the favorite,
Sure.
and they should still. I mean, and and they should be obviously. And look, they're trying to do something that is. What they've done every year for a while is historic. What they did last year to win three in a row was incredibly historic. What they're trying to do this year is unheard of
Never been
in
done.
in any sport at any level. What they're trying to do is unheard of.
Yep.
I think that's so like you have to take that into consideration. The fact that while there are only four series left, it's a long season, and this
Yep.
week in particular was weird to have to go to Austin and then play an unexpected midweek game and Wichita State, a team that OU was never going to lose to. There could be a billion parallel universes, and OU beats Wichita State handedly in every single one of them. But I will say my overall takeaway moving forward is I think OU is going to have to battle against complacency more than they ever have. That's one. And they talked about it openly last year. Not only that, but the exhaustion that comes from the pressure. That's one. Two, I think overall this team is a little bit more vulnerable than they have been in the past. And there's three main reasons for that. One, the softball landscape as a whole is better.
Yep.
Two, I think I was not surprised that Texas beat OU on Saturday. That didn't shock me. I was shocked that they beat them again on Sunday, doing it basically the same way they beat them on Saturday.
Yep.
And that was making OU, and you mentioned it. I said, I mean, OU was averaging over 6 walks a game coming into the series at 6 total. And I think they did show in some ways, like once you could have told me it was a fluke. 2 games winning it the same way is not a fluke. I think there is I think there is. Now you have to execute it really well, but I think there is a game plan to beat Oklahoma. There is the blueprint is maybe a little bit more clear than it has been in the past in terms of slowing down OU's offense. And then the pitching in the circle, Patty showed her hand. When the going gets tough,
Yep.
it's going to be Kelly Maxwell in the circle. And now it's going to be about trying to, I think this weekend against BYU, a team that OU should, no offense to BYU, sorry, OU should probably beat them 1 billion to nothing in like
Hmm.
every game. That, like, trying to keep Kelly Maxwell fresh all of a sudden, not that it wasn't the priority, but now is like
Yeah.
crucial.
Well, and on top of that, I think right now is the time that you need to establish who is your number two. Like
It,
you have to like we thought it was Nicole May, and maybe it still is, and maybe it should be, but I think there's value to seeing what Kirsten Deal. I mean, because Kirsten Deal, outside of that first start, she's been really, really good. Um, I don't know. It's a tough spot to be in. But go ahead.
I I think I mean it's gonna be Nicole May, I think. And look, Nicole May, I thought for the most part pitched pretty well on Saturday. For
Mm.
the most part. But I think Kelly Maxwell can win you a game. I think Nicole May and Kirsten Dill can keep you in a game, can help keep you in a game, but they need run support.
Yeah,
Guess what? 99% of pitchers need run support too.
yeah,
And also Kelly Maxwell's not, I mean, that's going to be the other thing too, is eventually, I mean, OU's offense didn't get anything going on Sunday, and Texas eventually, after seeing Kelly Maxwell for 12 innings, eventually broke through.
right.
No pitcher is immune to an offense not finding its way. But anyways, I agree. I mean, I think it could still be Kirsten Dill. She pitched last night. I thought she looked pretty good, but again, it's hard to know how much stock to put into
Sure.
that. But I will say, in terms of not hitting the panic button, if you told me that OU absolutely eviscerates everyone in their path the rest of the way and wins a fourth straight title, would I be surprised?
Nope.
I am going to be interested in watching the next couple of weekends because there's no reason OU's offense shouldn't go ballistic this weekend.
Right.
I'm curious to see how they handle the pitching staff because I bet we don't see Kelly Maxwell a ton. So how does OU handle it outside of her? Like my guess would be she'll pitch the first 4 innings on Friday or
Mm.
Thursday. Sorry, it starts Thursday, 6 p.m.
Yep.
That's what I think that's about how much we'll see her. But I don't know, man. That Oklahoma State series, if it wasn't already interesting coming up in a couple weeks, man,
Big one.
it's a huge one. I don't expect OU to get challenged much until then. Is there anything about this BYU series specifically? And again, not trying to write off the
No, no, no,
Cougars.
no.
Anything can happen, but is there anything you're looking at that you're going to be keeping an eye on?
So unless things have changed drastically, I want to pull up here and make sure that I'm still on par. Um, yeah, okay. So BYU ranks 11th in the country in scoring. They score 6.89 runs per game. Houston's 10th at 7.08 runs per game. So, um, you're facing still two offenses that have been really, really good over the next couple of weeks. This weekend against BYU, as weird as it probably sounds, not that body language didn't look good against Wichita State because they're still they still play within themselves and play who they are. But if if Oklahoma gets challenged in one of these games, if maybe BYU hits, maybe they get a hold of Kirsten Deal or somebody for a 2-run shot, and it's 2-0 BYU. Like, how does Oklahoma respond to that? How's the dugout respond to that? How does the field respond to that? I think that shows a lot, especially with a team that, there was no shortage of adversity last year at all. There wasn't. I mean, for them to go 61-1 and win the title the way that they did was incredible because there were so many instances where they had to dig themselves out of a hole and figure it out. But they just didn't do that against Texas last weekend. Uh, Kenzie Hansen, every once in a while, when she would get up to the plate, it felt like, that hit would start it off, but then like the bats, it instantly went cold after that. And it was ground outs or flyouts. So all that to be said, I'll be interested to see what the body language looks like if Oklahoma faces a challenge of some sort in this game and really until that Oklahoma State series because it's going to be it's a really big tell on where this team is at as a team because at the end of the day they're still the most talented roster in college softball. Like I don't think that's really even a question. What Texas has, Texas does deserve the credit for winning that series because the group of sophomores that Texas has, all those girls that are playing at the level that they are, they're sophomores.
I can't believe how young. I didn't
They
fully realize how young that roster
that
is. It's
team is
crazy.
going to be so good over the next 2 years. But Oklahoma still has the seniority. They still have the experience, and this year is still it's it's Oklahoma versus the field. It still is. And for now, everybody's talking about Texas. For now, everybody's maybe put Oklahoma in this box that they're not the favorite anymore. You're going to hear about it some this week, but uh, when playoff time gets here, whenever we see the tournament and it gets time for conference championships and Bedlam and all that stuff, it'll be big again. We just need to see how the body language and how the team looks in the weeks leading up to that.
Couldn't have said it better, man. Couldn't have said it better. I think we'll see what happens. See what happens this week. But
Yep.
I'm glad you said body language because I think that would have been my main thing. Is I just want to see OU not go through the motions. And I thought for the most part last night it looked like they kind of went through the motions.
Yep.
That you just want to see them bounce back. This is a weird place for them to be. They literally have not been in this position coming off a conference loss.
Yep.
In I was I was not even in high school yet. The last time they lost a conference series wasn't even. That was the year before I went to high school. I was in eighth grade, man. I
That's
was in eighth
crazy.
grade,
That's insane.
man.
That is nuts. Yeah.
Kind of wish I hadn't pointed that.
I'm excited. I'm excited about like when have we gotten to see Oklahoma with their backs truly against the wall in the regular season? So I don't know.
Or
Last
at
time I
least
can
feeling real pressure to bounce back.
yes, like
Yeah.
this is for them, they hold themselves to such a high standard. Like it feels like this is the moment where you really get it's kind of a gut check. Like it just is. So yeah, it's exciting.
Ryan, there's so much more we could talk about football, everything, but I think we're running out of time here. But the good news is we'll be back next week to preview all things spring game. And in another deluxe episode, we'll also get to talk about anything we haven't talked about already for the spring. What?
The
I
deluxe,
see
I
a
just
giggle.
love the deluxe, like
Deluxe.
the deluxe edition of the Oklahoma drill. I love that.
The DD, if you
Yeah.
will, or the ED, the D.
No, just
I'm just gonna let that go. I'm just gonna let that go.
ED. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
we'll talk about stuff we haven't already talked about. We'll break down what everyone should be looking for, all that fun stuff. But until next time, you know what to do. We've told you and told you. You go to the OU Insider YouTube channel right here, over there, everywhere. You hit the like and subscribe button. It's what you should do because there's content coming all the time. OU just got 2 new recruits in their 2025 class. Plenty to break down there. And go to ouinsider.com. Become a VIP subscriber. You'll see tons of content that you won't see anywhere else. Tons of behind the scenes stuff, tons of breakdowns, tons of feature stories, a community full of OU fans talking about all of the latest news, all kinds of stuff you won't want to miss. But we'll be back with you next week to preview the spring game here on the Oklahoma Drill. We'll see you next time.